Literature gives us the opportunity to experience lives, perspectives, and worlds different from our own. Though remember, friend, a good story has many readings, and this is but one. Imagine, if you will, a famous author in Victorian London with a good series of successful books, but whose latest work was kind of a flop. His publisher tells him, "If the next one doesn't take the egg, we're cutting your salary." Now he's only got one shot, one opportunity to write a surefire hit, or his money problems are only going to get worse. So, is he going to recapture his popularity or just let it slip? Well, what Charles Dickens did was take advantage of a current in vogue holiday and wrote his classic novella, A Christmas Carol. But who here's ever actually read that original story? Yeah, that checks out. Looks like we got a holiday episode on our hands. Thanks so much to Ting Mobile for helping us ring in the holidays loud and clear. So you haven't read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Even so, I'm still willing to bet that you know it includes a miser named Scrooge who gets visited by a bunch of ghosts who scare the dickens out of him. So, since we're going off the assumption that most of us know the summary, let's spend a little more time looking at something that really fascinates me. How the way many people celebrate Christmas to this day is directly influenced by the success of A Christmas Carol. It was 1843, and for a decade, Charles Dickens had been the literary toast of London. Not to mention, he'd just written his next novel, which he thought would be considered his greatest achievement. A work of literary art that's fame would surely outlive him, entitled Martin Chuzzlewit. How is it, you ask? Well, I never really want to yuck anyone else's yum, but let's just say I am fairly confident we will never do a So You Haven't Read Martin Chuzzlewit episode. Sorry, Charlie. Readers at the time weren't especially excited either. When Chuzzlewitz's sales underperformed, his publishers, the Scrooges that they were, told Dickens that if his next novel didn't knock it out of the park, they'd reduce his monthly income by £50, a considerable amount of money back in the day. And Dickens knew what it was like to live in poverty. When he was 11, his father was sent to Marshalsea, a notorious London debtors' prison. In fact, at the time, over 50% of London's prisoners were locked up due to their debt. So in order to make money for his family, young Charles had to leave school and work in a factory 10 hours a day. He'd been a proponent of economic reform ever since, a theme that runs through nearly all of his books. With all this financial pressure on him, Dickens, nervous but on the surface looking calm and ready, found inspiration for his next story while walking the streets of London. There he witnessed the abject poverty and deprecable living conditions of the poor and their children once again firsthand. And wanting to find a way to draw attention to their plight, he had an epiphany. A Christmas story connected to an appeal for the poor might be a great way to both inspire charity and get him a hit with his publisher. See, Christmas was in vogue in London at the time, even though for many preceding years, Christmas celebrations were primarily associated with rural life. But then in the 1830s and 40s, Londoners started celebrating with family gatherings, games, carols, and feasting. No better way to sling books or YouTube videos, wink, than to join in on a current trend. So Dickens got to work and in only 6 weeks wrote A Christmas Carol, which begins with Ebenezer Scrooge, the very model of an uncaring London money counter. He lives a solitary life, especially since his business partner, Jacob Marley, passed away. Then, on Christmas Eve, he's working in his office when he's constantly interrupted. First, by men seeking charitable donations, which he sends away. Then by his nephew inviting him to a Christmas gathering, which he declines. And finally, by his one employee's request for time off on Christmas Day, which he begrudgingly grants only after making sure he would be in early the next day. Dang, you're a mean one, Mr. Scrooge. Then, as he's getting ready for bed that night, he's visited by the ghost of his former business partner, Jacob Marley, covered in chains. Marley explains that the chains were forged from his own selfishness when he was alive, and that Scrooge was destined for even heavier chains, unless he changes his greedy ways. And in a last-ditch attempt to save his soul, 3 more ghosts will pay him visits. Scrooge is shaken by the visit, to say the least, knees weak and palms sweaty. Then, true to Marley's word, the first ghost promptly appears. Identifying themselves as the ghost of Christmas past, they show Scrooge the more innocent times in his life, including his old wonderful boss, his close relationship with his now-deceased sister, and how his growing greed caused him to lose the love of his life. Heartbroken at the realization of how much he's changed, he then extinguishes the ghost like a candle to stop the visions. But then he's immediately visited by the ghost of Christmas present. This ghost shows Scrooge how disconnected he's become from humanity. They visit his nephew, who's actively drinking to Scrooge's health and wishing the old miser would attend his party. And the ghost also shows Scrooge how his poor employee Bob Cratchit is celebrating the day with his family, most notably his small son, Tiny Tim. though Scrooge is racked by guilt when he learns from the ghost that Tiny Tim is not likely to live long due to the family's desperate poverty. Now it's here where Dickens makes his most overt connection to the current state of London, because in the original version, beneath the robes of the Ghost of Christmas Present are a pair of terrifying children that the ghost identifies as ignorance and want. Dickens hoped his audience would realize that these represent starving and destitute children in their own towns. Then finally, Scrooge is visited by the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, a terrifying spirit whose visions he shows Scrooge shakes him to his core. Evidence of the death of Tiny Tim, but also how Scrooge's own death inspires not a shred of sympathy. Horrified, he vows to change. Snap back to reality. Scrooge wakes up on Christmas morning a changed man. In the course of the day, he makes an enormous donation to help the poor and attends his nephew's Christmas party. Then the next day at work, he rewards Cratchit with a raise and eventually becomes a second father to Tiny Tim, who survives in part due to Scrooge's aid. Our reformed hero lives to break the chains of greed and selfishness, win the love and respect of his community, and keep the generous Christmas spirit in his heart every day from that day on. When Dickens published this novella, it was an immediate hit. Its entire first run sold out, the critics loved it, and his career was saved. But more importantly, word got around London that people who read A Christmas Carol were inspired to give generously to the poor. Poverty was not defeated, of course, but his story did directly improve the lives of many people. And though he didn't live to see it, the enduring popularity of A Christmas Carol cemented many of the Victorian Christmas traditions in the English-speaking world from that time forth, including the new tradition of helping the less fortunate at Christmas time. He also helped give rise to the popularity of the phrase Merry Christmas, as well as the phrase Bah Humbug. And in Scrooge, he gave the world an iconic character synonymous with greed and change. In fact, Dickens' story has itself become a ubiquitous part of the Christmas season. Not too bad for a book that was written in part out of desperation. And getting together with friends to share a story and then do something for the community is exactly how Charles Dickens would have wanted us to lose ourselves in Christmas today. So from all of us at the coffee shop, we hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and we wish you and yours all of Mom's spaghetti you can eat. And if you'd like to call your friends and family to wish them cold gimmick pasta or whatever your traditional season's greeting is, they'll hear you the clearest on the new and improved Ting Mobile. Have your phone bills lately been getting to be a bit much? Same. That is, of course, until I heard about Ting, and I learned that I could cut my phone bill nearly in half, all while keeping my old number. That's because Ting's got a plan that can save you money no matter your needs or budget. For instance, if you just want unlimited talk and text, they got you covered for only $10 a month. Or depending how much data you desire, Ting has plans starting at $25 all the way up to the mighty unlimited talk, text, and data for just $45, meaning there's a perfect plan for you and your family. And speaking of families, you know what time it is, Jeff. Since switching to Ting 10 months ago, how much have you saved on your brood's 2 phones and an iPad? Over $775? Shut the front door, Jeff! Are you serious? Huh, looks like someone's footing the bill for the EC holiday party this year. 3-story ice luge, here we come, Zoe. What's really neat, though, is the only thing that actually changes is you getting a lower monthly phone bill. You still get robust nationwide LTE and 5G coverage, not to mention access to Ting's award-winning customer service, plus no contracts ever. And switching has never been simpler. Just head to extracredits.ting.com to check your phone's compatibility, create an account, and pick the plan that's right for you. Not to mention, if you bring your existing phone, you'll get a $25 service credit to try Ting with no strings attached. And because using our link, again that's extracredits.ting.com, helps support the shows you love while lowering your phone bill, there really has never been a better time to try Ting for yourself. Hey there, Ahmed Ziad Turk, Joseph Blame, Alicia Bramble, Kyle Murgatroyd, Casey Muscha, O'Reels1, and Dominic Valenciana. The legends are you!